Section 37 of the Ego and His Own. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. The Ego and His Own by Max Stirner. My Self-Enjoyment, Part 3. The professionals, the privileged, brook no freedom of thought, i.e., no thoughts that do not come from the giver of all good, be he called God, Pope, Church, or whatever else. If anybody has such illegitimate thoughts, he must whisper them into his confessor's ear, and have himself chastised by him till the slave whip becomes unendurable to the free thoughts. In other ways, too, the professional spirit takes care that free thoughts shall not come at all, first and foremost by a wise education. He on whom the principles of morality have been duly inculcated never becomes free again. Moralizing thoughts and robbery, perjury, overreaching, etc., remain to him fixed ideas against which no freedom or thought protects him. He has his thoughts from above and gets no further. It is different with the holders of concessions or patents. Every one must be able to have and form thoughts as he will. If he has the patent or the concession of a capacity to think, he needs no special privilege, but as all men are rational, it is free to every one to put into his head any thoughts whatever, and to the extent of the patent of his natural endowment, to have a greater or less wealth of thoughts. Now one hears the admonitions that one is to honour all opinions and convictions, that every conviction is authorized, that one must be tolerant to the views of others, etc. But your thoughts are not my thoughts, and your ways are not my ways, or rather, I mean the reverse. Your thoughts are my thoughts, which I dispose of as I will, and which I strike down unmercifully. They are my property, which I annihilate as I list. I do not wait for authorization from you first, to decompose and blow away your thoughts. It does not matter to me that you call these thoughts yours too. They remain mine nevertheless, and how I will proceed with them is my affair, not your exploitation. It may please me to leave you in your thoughts, then I keep still. Do you believe thoughts fly around free like birds, so that every one may get himself some which he may then make good against me as his inviolable property? What is flying around is all mine. Do you believe you have your thoughts for yourselves, and need answer to no one for them? Or, as you do also say, you have to give an account of them to God only? No, your great and small thoughts belong to me, and I handle them at my pleasure. The thought is my own only when I have no misgiving about bringing it in danger of death every moment, when I do not have to fear its loss as a loss for me, a loss of me. The thought is my own only when I can indeed subjugate it, but it never can subjugate me, never fantasizes me, makes me the tool of its realization. So, freedom of thought exists when I can have all possible thoughts, but the thoughts become property only by not being able to become masters. In the time of freedom of thought, thoughts, ideas, rule. But if I attain to property in thought, they stand as my creatures. If the hierarchy had not so penetrated men to the innermost as to take from them all courage to pursue free thoughts, e.g., thoughts perhaps displeasing to God, one would have to consider freedom of thought just as empty a word as, say, a freedom of digestion. According to the professional's opinion, the thought is given to me. According to the free thinkers, I seek the thought. There the truth is already found and extant. Only I must receive it from its giver by grace. Here the truth is to be sought and is my goal, lying in the future toward which I have to run. In both cases the true thought, lies outside me, and I aspire to get it, be it by presentation, grace, be it by earning, merit of my own. Therefore, 1. The truth is a privilege. 2. No, the way to it is patent to all, and neither the Bible nor the Holy Fathers nor the Church nor anyone else is in possession of the truth, but one can come into possession of it by speculating. Both, one sees, are property less in relation to the truth. They have it either as a thief from the Holy Father, e.g. is not a unique person, as unique he is the Sixtus, Clement, but he does not have the truth as Sixtus, Clement, but as Holy Father, i.e. as a spirit, or an ideal, as a thief. It is only for a few, the privileged, as an ideal, for all, the patentees. Freedom of thought, then, has the meaning that we do indeed all walk in the dark and in the paths of error, but every one can on this path approach the truth, and is accordingly on the right path. All roads lead to Rome, to the world's end, etc. Hence freedom of thought means this much, that the truth thought is not my own, for if it were this, how should people want to shut me off from it? Thinking has become entirely free, and has laid down a lot of truths which I must accommodate myself to. It seeks to complete itself into a system, and to bring itself into an absolute constitution. In the state, e.g., it seeks for the idea, say, till it has brought out the rational state, in which I am then obliged to be suited. In man, anthropology, till it has found man. The thinker is distinguished from the believer only by believing much more than the latter, who, on his part, thinks of much less, as signified by his faith, creed. The thinker has 1,000/10 of faith, where the believer gets along with few, but the former brings coherence into his tenets, and takes the coherence in turn for the scale to estimate their worth by. If one or the other does not fit into his budget, he throws it out. The thinkers run parallel to the believers in their pronouncements. Instead of, if it is from God, you will not root it out, the word is, if it is from the truth, is true, etc. Instead of, give God the glory, give truth the glory. But it is very much the same to me whether God or the truth wins. First and foremost, I want to win. Aside from this, how is an unlimited freedom to be thinkable inside of the state or society? The state may well protect one against another, but yet it must not let itself be endangered by an unmeasured freedom, a so-called unbridledness. Thus, in freedom of instruction, the state declares only this, that it is suited with every one who instructs as the state, or speaking more comprehensively, the political power, would have it. The point for the competitors is this, as the state would have it. If the clergy, e.g., does not will as the state does, then it itself excludes itself from competition. Vid. France. The limit that is necessarily drawn in the state for any and all competition is called the oversight and superintendence of the state. In bidding freedom of instruction, keeping within the due bonds, the state at the same time fixes the scope of freedom of thought, because, as a rule, people do not think farther than their teachers have thought. Here Minster Grisot. The great difficulty of the day is the guiding and dominating of the mind. Formerly the Church fulfilled this mission. Now it is not adequate to it. It is from the University that this great service must be expected, and the University will not fail to perform it. We, the Government, have the duty of supporting it therein. The Charter calls for the freedom of thought and that of conscience. So in favour of freedom of thought and conscience, the minister demands the guiding and dominating of the mind. Catholicism held the examinee before the forum of ecclesiasticism, Protestantism before that of biblical Christianity. It would be but little bettered if one held him before that of reason, as Rugg, e.g., wants to. Whether the Church, the Bible, or reason, to which moreover Luther and Huss already appealed, is the sacred authority makes no difference in essentials. The question of our time does not become soluble even when one puts it thus: is anything general authorized, or only the individual? Is the generality, e.g., state, law, custom, morality, etc., authorized, or individuality? It becomes soluble for the first time when one no longer asks after an authorization at all, and does not carry on a mere fight against privileges. A rational freedom of teaching, which recognizes only the conscience of reason, does not bring us to the goal. We require an egoistic freedom of teaching rather, a freedom of teaching for all ownness, wherein I become audible and can announce myself unchecked. That I make myself audible, this alone is reason. Be I ever so irrational in my making myself heard, and so hearing myself, others as well as I myself enjoy me, and at the same time consume me. What would be gained if, as formerly the orthodox I, the loyal I, the moral I, etc., was free, now the rational I should become free? Would this be the freedom of me? If I am free as rational I, then the rational in me, or reason, is free, and this freedom of reason, or freedom of the thought, was the ideal of the Christian world from of old. They wanted to make thinking, and, as aforesaid, faith is also thinking, as thinking is faith, free. The thinkers, i.e., the believers as well as the rational, were to be free. For the rest freedom was impossible. But the freedom of thinkers is the freedom of the children of God, and at the same time the most merciless hierarchy or dominion of the thought, for I succumb to the thought. If thoughts are free, I am their slave. I have no power over them, and am dominated by them, but I want to have the thought, want to be full of thoughts, but at the same time I want to be thoughtless, and instead of freedom of thought, I preserve for myself thoughtlessness. If the point is to have myself understood and to make communications, then assuredly I can make use only of human means, which are at my command, because I am at the same time man. And really I have thoughts only as man, as I am at the same time thoughtless. He who cannot get rid of a thought is so far only man, is a thrall of language. This human institution, this treasury of human thoughts, language or the word, tyrannizes hardest over us, because it brings up against us a whole army of fixed ideas. Just observe yourself in the act of reflection, right now, and you will find how you make progress only by becoming thoughtless and speechless every moment. You are not thoughtless and speechless merely in, say, sleep, but even in the deepest reflection. Yes, precisely, then most so. And only by this thoughtlessness, this unrecognized freedom of thought, or freedom from the thought, are you your own. From only it do you arrive at putting language to use as your property. If thinking is not my thinking, it is merely a spun out thought. It is slave work, or the work of a servant obeying at the word. For not a thought, but I, am the beginning for my thinking, and therefore I am its goal too, even as its whole course is only a course of my self-enjoyment. For absolute or free thinking, on the other hand, thinking itself is the beginning, and it plagues itself with propounding this beginning as the extremest abstraction, e.g. as being. This very abstraction or this thought is then spun out further. Absolute thinking is the affair of the human spirit, and this is a holy spirit. Hence this thinking is an affair of the parsons, who have a sense for it, a sense for the highest interests of mankind, for the spirit. To the believer, truths are a settled thing, a fact; to the free thinker, a thing that is still to be settled. Be absolute thinking ever so unbelieving, its incredulity has its limits, and there does remain a belief in the truth, in the spirit, in the idea and its final victory. This thinking does not sin against the Holy Spirit, but all thinking that does not sin against the Holy Spirit is belief in spirits or ghosts. I can as little renounce thinking as feeling, the spirit's activity as little as the activity of the senses. As feeling is our sense for things, so thinking is our sense for essence, thoughts. Essence have their existence in everything sensuous, especially in the word. The power of words follows that of things. First one is coerced by the rod, afterward by conviction. The might of things overcomes our courage, our spirit, against the power of a conviction, and so of the word, even the rack and the sword lose their overpoweringness and force. The men of conviction are the priestly men, who resist every enticement of Satan. Christianity took away from the things of this world only their irresistibleness, made us independent of them. In like manner, I raise myself above truths and their power. As I am supersensual, so I am supertrue. Before me, truths are as common and as indifferent as things. They do not carry me away, and do not inspire me with enthusiasm. There exists not even one truth, not right, not freedom, humanity, etc., that has stability before me, and to which I subject myself. They are words, nothing but words. As to the Christian, nothing but vain things. In words and truths, every word is a truth, as Hegel asserts that one cannot tell a lie. There is no salvation for me, as little as there is for the Christian in things and vanities. As the riches of this world do not make me happy, so neither do its truths. It is now no longer Satan, but the spirit, that plays the story of the temptation, and he does not seduce by the things of this world, but by its thoughts, by the glitter of the idea. Along with worldly goods, all sacred goods too must be put away as no longer valuable. Truths are phrases, ways of speaking, words, logos, brought into connection, or into an articulate series. They form logic, science, philosophy. For thinking and speaking, I need truths and words, as I do foods for eating. Without them I cannot think nor speak. Truths are men's thoughts, set down in words, and therefore just as extant as other things. although extant only for the mind or for thinking. They are human institutions and human creatures, and even if they are given out for divine revelations, there still remains in them the quality of alienness for me. Yes, as my own creatures, they are already alienated from me after the act of creation. The Christian man is the man with faith in thinking, who believes in the supreme dominion of thoughts, and wants to bring thoughts, so-called principles, to dominion. Many a one does indeed test their thoughts and chooses none of them for his master without criticism, but in this he is like the dog who sniffs at people to smell out his master. He is always aiming at the ruling thought. The Christian may reform and revolt an infinite deal, may demolish the ruling concepts of centuries. He will always aspire to a new principle or new master again, always set up a higher or deeper truth again, always call forth a cult again, always proclaim a spirit called to dominion, lay down a law for all. If there is even one truth only to which man has to devote his life and his powers because he is man, then he is subjected to a rule, dominion, law. He is a serving man. It is supposed that, e.g., man, humanity, liberty, etc., are such truths. On the other hand, one can say thus: whether you will further occupy yourself with thinking depends on you. Only know that, if, in your thinking, you would like to make out anything worthy of notice, many hard problems are to be solved, without vanquishing which you cannot get far. There exists, therefore, no duty and no calling for you to meddle with thoughts, ideas, truths, but if you will do so, you will do well to utilize what the forces of others have already achieved toward clearing up these difficult subjects. Thus, therefore, he who will think does assuredly have a task which he consciously or unconsciously sets for himself in willing that. But no one has the task of thinking or of believing. In the former case it may be said, you do not go far enough, you have a narrow and biased interest, you do not go to the bottom of the thing, in short, you do not completely subdue it. But on the other hand, however far you may come at any time, you are still always at the end. You have no call to step further, and you can have it as you will or as you are able. It stands with this as with any other piece of work, which you can give up when the humour for it wears off. Just so, if you can no longer believe a thing, you do not have to force yourself into faith, or to busy yourself lastingly, as if with a sacred truth of the faith, as theologians or philosophers do, but you can tranquilly draw back your interest from it, and let it run. Priestly spirits will indeed expound this your lack of interest as laziness, thoughtlessness, obduracy, self-deception, etc. But do you just let the trumpery lie, notwithstanding? No thing, no so-called highest interest of mankind, no sacred cause, is worth your serving it and occupying yourself with it for its sake. You may seek its worth in this alone, whether it is worth anything to you for your sake. Become like children, the biblical saying admonishes us, but children have no sacred interest and know nothing of a good cause. They know all the more accurately what they have a fancy for, and they think over to the best of their powers how they are to arrive at it. Thinking will as little cease as feeling, and they think over to the best of their powers how they are to arrive at it. Thinking will as little cease as feeling, but the power of thoughts and ideas, the dominion of theories and principles, the sovereignty of the spirit, in short, the hierarchy, lasts as long as the parsons, i.e., theologians, philosophers, statesmen, philanthropists, liberals, schoolmasters, servants, parents, children, married couples, Proudhon, George Sand, Bluntschli, etc., etc., have the floor. The hierarchy will endure as long as people believe in, think of, or even criticize principles. For even the most inexorable criticism, which undermines all current principles, still does finally believe in the principle. Everyone criticizes, but the criterion is different. People run after the right criterion. The right criterion is the first presupposition. The critic starts from a proposition, a truth, a belief. This is not a creation of the critic, but of the dogmatic. Nay, commonly it is actually taken up out of the culture of the time without further ceremony, like e.g. liberty, humanity, etc. The critic has not discovered man, but his truth has been established as man by the dogmatist, and the critic, who besides may be the same person with him, believes in this truth, this article of faith. In this faith, and possessed by this faith, he criticizes. The secret of criticism is some truth or other. This remains its energizing mystery. But I distinguish between servile and own criticism. If I criticize under the presupposition of a supreme being, my criticism serves the being and is carried on for its sake. If, e.g., I am possessed by the belief in a free state, then everything that has a bearing on it I criticize from the standpoint of whether it is suitable to this state, for I love this state. If I criticize as a pious man, then for me everything falls into the classes of divine and diabolical, and before my criticism, nature consists of traces of God or traces of the devil, hence names like God's gift, God mount, the devil's pulpit. Men of believers and unbelievers, if I criticize while believing in man as the true essence, then for me everything falls primarily into the classes of man and the unman, etc. Criticism has to this day remained a work of love, for at all times we exercised it for the love of some being. All servile criticism is a product of love, a possessiveness, and proceeds according to that New Testament precept: test everything and hold fast the good. The good is the touchstone, the criterion. The good, returning under 1,000 names and forms, remained always the presupposition, remained the dogmatic, fixed point for this criticism, remained the fixed idea. The critic, in setting to work, impartially presupposes the truth, and seeks for the truth in the belief that it is to be found. He wants to ascertain the true, and has in it that very good. Presuppose means nothing else than put a thought in front, or think something before everything else, and think the rest from the starting point of this that has been thought, i.e., measure and criticize it by this. In other words, this is as much as to say that thinking is to begin with something already thought. If thinking began at all instead of being begun, if thinking were a subject, an acting personality of its own, as even the plant is such, then indeed there would be no abandoning the principle that thinking must begin with itself. But it is just the personification of thinking that brings to pass those innumerable errors. In the Hegelian system they always talk as if thinking, or the thinking spirit, i.e. personified thinking, thinking as a ghost, thought and acted. In critical liberalism it is always said that criticism does this and that, or else that self-consciousness finds this and that. But if thinking acts as the personal actor, thinking itself must be presupposed. If criticism ranks as such, A thought must likewise stand in front. Thinking and criticism could be active only starting from themselves, would have to be themselves the presupposition of their activity, as without being they could not be active. But thinking as a thing presupposed is a fixed thought, a dogma. Thinking and criticism, therefore, can start only from a dogma, i.e. from a thought, a fixed idea, a presupposition. With this we come back again to what was enunciated above, that Christianity consists in the development of a world of thoughts, or that it is the proper freedom of thought, the free thought, the free spirit. The true criticism, which I called servile, is therefore just as much free criticism, for it is not my own. The case stands otherwise when what is yours is not made into something that is of itself, not personified, not made independent as a spirit to itself. Your thinking has for a presupposition not thinking, but you. But thus you do presuppose yourself after all. Yes, but not for myself, but for my thinking. Before my thinking there is I. From this it follows that my thinking is not preceded by a thought, or that my thinking is without a presupposition. For the presupposition which I am for my thinking is not one made by thinking, not one thought of, but is position thinking itself. It is the owner of the thought, and proves only that thinking is nothing more than property, i.e. that an independent thinking, a thinking spirit, does not exist at all. This reversal of the usual way of regarding things might so resemble an empty playing with abstractions that even those against whom it is directed would acquiesce in the harmless aspect I give, if practicable consequences were not connected with it. To bring these into a concise expression, the assertion now made is that man is not the measure of all things, but I am this measure. The servile critic has before his eyes another being, an idea, which he means to serve. Therefore he only slays the false idols for his God. What is done for the love of this being? What else should it be but a work of love? But I, when I criticize, do not even have myself before my eyes, but am only doing myself a pleasure, amusing myself according to my taste, according to my several needs. I chew the thing up or only inhale its odour. The distinction between the two attitudes will come out still more strikingly if one reflects that the servile critic, because love guides him, supposes he is serving the thing, cause, itself. End of section 37. Recording by Elaine Webb, Bristol, England.